Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are talking about the handling of historical entities in Wolfram Language. So, examples of that are, well, let's take a look here. We are dealing with the Roman Empire, for example. So, okay, so what is this? So this is now, what on earth is this minus 27 thing doing?
Oh, that's a list of years and polygons. So when one query for the Roman Empire and the polygon and the date is set to all, it shows a list of pairs where the first element is a date and the second one is the polygon that we have for that span of years.
Okay, so is this working now?
Yes, that's working now.
Okay, so one of the issues here is going to be, I mean, what should this return? Should this return a time series, or what should this return? Because I think this list of pairs is crazy. I mean, I think if we're going to do that, we should, and this date arrow all is the wrong thing as well, right? But this is what's happening right now. Is that right? But what we
Correct.
think should happen is that we should be doing essentially Roman Empire, and that's presumably going to be historical country. That is the same thing there, that input form, right? Okay. So then what we think we want to do is something like, if I'm not mistaken, well, I don't know, you tell me. I mean, we could say dated 55 BC or something. That is, by the way, weird that 55 BC turns into that. I mean, that it displays like that is kind of weird. What do people think about that? I mean, if I say, August 1st, 1777 or something. Wow, why is it turning into that? I thought it would turn into, oh, I see it. It formats like that, but it turns into that. Do we think that's right, Nick?
I mean, there in general, I think the name Lou has for what's in control equals is mostly input form. There are special cases like quantity that typeset there, but I think the idea is that you want to be able to see what the language representation of it looks like without necessarily typesetting everything. We could certainly make an exception for dates.
I think we should consider that. Let's put that on the shelf for a minute, okay?
Okay. Yep.
But now this thing here, this is not going to do anything right now.
No, but what you can do there is that you can try to add some properties for dated Roman Empire in that year, and you can add a polygon, and you can get a result. In this case, well, the Roman Empire was not in that year, so we can try something like 55 AC.
What? 55? So plus 55, you're saying?
Yes.
Wait. The reason minus 55 didn't work is because the Roman Empire as such did not exist. It was something with a different name. Is that right?
Yes, that was the Roman Republic. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because Caesar didn't, whatever, whoever made. Okay, so this is one of the many, many cans of worms that we're going to deal with here, is the concept of the fact that we want a generic, I mean, okay, is this continuity of things, because the fact that it was the Roman Republic as opposed to the Roman Empire is going to be kind of subtle. Okay, okay, so then this is, all right. By the way, why? Oh, that's the polygon of this, which is again a kind of an obscure thing. I'm not sure. I see, but because most things like geo, so if I say geographics of this, what am I going to get? Okay, fine, I get that. Okay, so if but mostly what we want to do is be able to feed in, and I don't think this is going to work right now. If I take this dated Roman Empire thing and I just say geo list plot of that, is it going to work? No. So that should work, I think. Do we agree?
Correct.
Okay, fine. Okay, so go ahead.
What should it do? Because in principle, it's just a single object.
Well, geolist plot works fine for a single object.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Oops, Oh, wow, it auto-corrected. Why it's taking so long, I have no idea. Why is it taking any time? There we go. Okay, so that's what that should do.
Yep.
Okay. So in other words, dated of Roman Empire, fine. Now, dateless plot map geo area. So if I'm to say, so why wouldn't this work? So then presumably geo area of, so I mean, if I say, let's just check this. If I say geo area of control equals Roman Empire, okay, that works fine. So then the only issue is to do it with the dated wrapper as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
And the meaning of the dated wrapper is it an entity qualifier, or what does it look like underneath?
Underneath the hood, yeah, it's a qualifier for the entity property, I believe.
Yes, it's inherited by the property, not by the entity itself.
Okay, so which is not obviously correct. So I mean, we have this notion of an entity qualifier, which is something like 5 grams of gold, for example, right?
Yeah, I think that's entity instances.
Yes, entity instance.
Yeah, but that's because something underlying that in the alpha framework supports that kind of thing. That's not a model that applies to every other kind of entity.
But in terms of design, is the Roman Empire in 55 AD an instance of the Roman Empire? Well, here, look. We've got, in fact, this exact example. Look at that.
Yeah,
What do you know? I'm sorry, this is not going to be winnable. Look at this. That's an entity instance, which is equivalent to saying, I think, dated Ireland. Okay, so wait a minute. Why does dated want something else? Oh, dated. I'm sorry, it needs a date. 1950.
But I think it's still just fundamentally going to distribute those other qualifiers across the properties.
So you think this, but okay, this thing here.
However you want to represent it in language, but I'm just saying underneath what.
Yeah, that's fine. What it does underneath is fine, but I think we need to support entity instance so we need this notion of a qualified, a date qualified entity instance, which I think this is fine. And but that's equivalent to dated of the thing. And this is yet again equivalent to, Ireland dated, so if I say Ireland, and then I say dated population 1850 or something, then I'll get a result. Great. Wow, it's interesting. It's higher in 1850 than in 1950. Or is that because it broke off? That, I'm afraid, is probably one of these country continuity things, because probably Northern Ireland broke off, right? History buffs.
Yeah.
But it didn't change the name of the core thing. It was still called Ireland as a country.
Yes, in particular in
South Sudan, when we have splits.
Yes, in particular in country data, we have been more, let's say, flexible in the population property, so that we are not breaking that exactly when it started, but some kind of continuity. Yep. So that we can have all populations.
Okay, let's take a look at the area of the Roman Empire here. Okay, do we believe this plot? How accurate is this plot? What do we think is happening when it was, this is very unlikely to be right.
Well, that gap was the first time of the division of the Roman Empire between East and West. And I think that was with Constantine, I think. Mm-hmm. And then it got merged again, and then it went on.
No, but this one here, I understand. But what I'm saying is, look at that straight line joining what's happening in 300 AD with what's happening in 340 AD.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it should be a step plot, really. Now that I think, because what we have are we don't have intermediate points in this case.
Oh, I
Yes.
see what you're saying. That's a pure plotting problem. Right, but so the question is, what happens if you say, okay, so what happens if I say geo area of the dated Roman Empire, right? So let's say I say dated Roman Empire of, and I want it for 320 AD, CE, whatever you call it, plus 320, right? So I don't know whether this is going to even evaluate. Okay, so it gives a value, but now what happens if I say 330? Okay, so it's going to be the same up until, so I see. So the way this is working is, so I don't understand why that function, oh, there was an all there. But so if I were to plot, so I could in principle do this, well, I could, if I really wanted to live dangerously, I could say plot, but let me just do this. Table, geo area X goes from, let's say, 280 to 330 in steps of 10. By the way, Nick, how is this going to be? Oh, that was decently fast. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that it jumps in steps, right? Is that the best we can do?
So far from our sources, we have we have the polygons for each different date in that case. So we only have that kind of step increase in the or change on the polygons.
But what do we think? So in cases like those blips, what are those blips?
Those may be cases where, for instance, the Romans conquered a province and then they lost it, like the next year. The highest accuracy we can get with our sources is like 1 per year accuracy in that regard.
Okay, so did that happen a lot? Did they like gain? So if I look, I don't know, what if I look, for example, let's do the corresponding thing for like Germany around the time of the Second World War. Now I'm going to show my pathetic knowledge of history. When did it start? When did they walk into Austria? 1935 or something?
The Anschluss was in 38.
38?
Mhm.
Francisco and company, is this going to work with Germany or not? Because
the thing is that, well,
it's not a historical country. So what do I do to get the historical country of Germany?
we can put Nazi Germany in that case as historical country.
I see. Okay, so this is something again we're going to have to resolve. What to do with this? You know, this is this question about whether that's interesting. That's bizarre. Okay, that is frigging weird. How could it have a negative area?
That's coming from these error messages because it's field curve and field curve not necessarily has the first one outer, the other one inner. In this case, it got confused for some reason.
So you're saying what happened is within the territory controlled by Nazi Germany, there was a hole.
Exactly.
And we didn't handle. So are we doing version 12 holy polygons for all this historical country data, or did that not yet get done?
Not yet. So the idea is that we have now the polygon with holes, and then we will propagate it to geo.
By the way, does anybody know whether I have an area where I'm keeping notes about this stuff?
couldn't remember. It's been a long time since we had a meeting about this.
Okay, I'm gonna start a new folder called historical data. I wish I could say that I think this is going to be done in one meeting, but I don't think it will be. We can't, after all, summarize all of history in one meeting. Okay, so if I were to do this, so for example, here, if I say, So here, like if I'm saying like 1940 here, what you think? Okay, but if I say I see. If I say polygon of that, you think I'm going to get some bonkers thing. Okay, and if I say geo list plot of that, what the heck is that? Well, that's really weird because it's lines. Oh, I see. It's a filled curve of lines, but then those lines are doing something wacky.
Okay, can you try geographics directly instead of geolist plot?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is that even right? Oh, I see. That's Poland. That's modern Poland with a piece missing. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's correct, and the piece missing was taken by Soviet Union. As
Okay.
Poland was attacked on the east from the other country.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but so where's the missing hole? I mean, so somewhere in the middle of this, there's some problem with topology.
Right. They're probably quite small.
I see. So okay, so this is great. So I mean, this has. Okay, so you think it's a small hole of some kind?
It might be the water on the border between Poland and Germany. You see, there is, close to the Baltic Sea. So maybe that's how this understands that as a whole, because it's a water body there. So.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a whole polygons with holes. Okay. So question: Have we redone all of these historical countries as polygons with holes?
Not yet, I think.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Yes, because geographics does not yet support the polygons with holes. So now that we have them, they will be added for the next version.
Okay. All right. So basically, we think it's non-stupid to basically just go constant until we know something changes. I agree with you. I think that's as non-stupid as we can be. So in the case of this, what we should do is simply when we give the examples, we should give step plots. Do we have a date step list plot?
I think so.
Really? Nick, this doesn't appear to have been cached or to be cacheable. Or is this a silly query? It doesn't look like a particularly silly query.
Yeah, sometimes things are tricky with qualified properties, but I would expect this one to be cached.
Well, just look into that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying we think there is a date step list plot or not?
Yes, we have a date list step plot.
Okay, fine. Great. Okay, so then I just think when we give examples, we should use that. So people don't get the idea you can do this. Okay, time series, polygon time series.
So right now, this structure of date, comma, the polygon, it's like the one that it's expected by date list plot and functions like that.
Sorry, say that again.
So we choose this structure because that's the one supported by date list plot functions, for example. So it's not as nice
this
as
structure here. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Right. So that's a different. I see. So the issue is, what do you return when there's an interval? Right. What do you return for an interval? What do you return in particular in the case of the complete? Okay, so we've got an analogy. Word frequency data has this analogy. Let's see. We've got time series here, right? Is that right? That will give us the complete time series of that use of that word. Now, what you're saying here is what's the analog for getting the complete time series of the polygons? Is that right?
Right. For now, we choose to return the date comma value because
I don't think that's great. I think, but it's a question of what you're returning it for. I mean, if you, this case, this syntax is sufficiently complicated. I don't think that's what we want people to use. What we want is for them to be able to generate a, you know, the analog of this.
But dated all also works. So that's probably the easy path.
Okay, so wait a minute. So you're saying in this case here, I'm not going to do this probably because if I were to say dated comma all here, polygon, right, then I would return, give me something which is a smaller empire. Well, who knows? Okay, so then this case is going to return this form here. Okay, so I claim this should return a time series. Should it return a time series or an event series? We really have a different construct here because we have something which is a time series in which you're stepping. You get what I'm saying? Or is that, or can that be represented by a time series in which the interpolation is what it is?
It's called from the left. So that's what I would suggest, because you know that the polygon is constant for, you know, some years till it changes to something else. So you just hold the value from the left.
Okay, so fine. So there's a representation in the time series wrapper that allows us to specify this. So let's convert this to a time series. So how would we do that? So if I just say time series of this, okay, hold on. Let's just do it to see what we're getting. Okay, so this is all okay, so time series of this, and then how do we do the hold from left?
So do the resampling method. Resampling method. Resampling. Because that's meaning accessing that, and then in the string hold from the left. And
hold from left, hold from left?
Yes.
Like this? By the way, we can pick a different thing than whatever. Okay. There were only 8 data points here.
8 years.
Oh, right. Why are there 8 years? Why are there not 9 years there? Or am I being stupid?
No, it's the changes. It's not by year. It's by the time when something changed in the polygon. When you look back at the list, the first date is 36. The next one is, you know, its next one is I think 38 or 39. So if you do the right.
I see. So nothing happened. Okay, I get it. I mean, one day we might want to try and be more precise with these, although, you know, at some level, right, you're not going to get the second at which something happened. Okay.
But do
we in fact have any more precise data of I mean, clearly, okay, by year, most military campaigns, it's like it got somewhere during that year. Whereas if we try to do it by the even, you know, by the day, it's like, you know, tanks were rolling, but they had, you know, who knows how far they had got. If I'm making sense of but okay, so here I'm a little confused why. Oh, I see. That's the time series format. Okay, so now if I want to extract something from that time series, what would I do? If I say %25 and then I say of 1938, does that work? Oops.
The date object, if you know.
But so I can't say that.
No, it has to be recognizable as a date in the system.
Why do we make it great? What's that doing?
Oh, because the data is this something with the fact that the time series is not stored properly in the notebook?
Well, it seems not to be right, because that isn't going to be an adequate answer. Yeah, see, that does the right thing, but this needs to do the right thing. This needs to give us these.
Well, it's my bad, probably on the wrong.
So wait a minute. So you're saying you gave us the wrong specification, or you think that this is? I mean, this should work. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think what happened, I think, is that I gave you the wrong string, which I would like to check, because the other way I know how to do it the other way, but it's longer. So
Okay, well, let's just. By the way, when are we going to get? This is a comment for anybody involved with documentation here. Which maybe is nobody. When are we going to get the raft coming up for options? Who's project managing here? Can we
That's me, Fatima, but I
Okay.
think it's Ben usually. I don't know.
I think that's for Brian or Ben. But the basic point is that the raft of the same kind that comes up here should come up for these options. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, what is the correct name? Gosha,
can we do it? Can we say it differently? So resampling method goes to open a list and put interpolation, comma, interpolation as a string, comma, interpolation order goes to 0.
I didn't like go. Well, that's because percent was something stupid. 24. Okay, so then 38. So what we should be able to do here then, oh, come on. Oh, percent 31. Okay, so what we should be able to do, just naively here, we should be able to say year, and then we can go from, what did I have, 1936, so I can say table, year, 1936, to 1940, what did I do, 1945 there, but I think I may have said 47, didn't I? Okay, so let's see what this does. So this should be generating, and it's a bit slow. Oh, come now. What is that?
The problem here is that we have values for the entity until 1945. That's where Nazi Germany ceased to be.
So
Right.
the problem with this,
I'm aware of that piece of history, but I don't know what the. Okay,
It's extrapolating. So the thing is that we were looking at the time series beyond its domain. So the time series defined exist only until 1945, right? And then you ask for the extrapolation, so it's just gonna continue. Interpolation, which is extrapolation, but it warns you that you went outside of that domain.
Okay, but that input value thing is really pretty nutso. I don't think. Okay, listen, we should clean this up a bit because we're going to be using this for these. I mean, we don't want to talk about interpolating functions because there shouldn't, because there really isn't. It's 0th order interpolation. That's going to be confusing to people, etc. Okay. So there's a little bit of yeah.
Yes, but also we need a way to say before this date and after this date return missing, because that's something I think the time series should do in this case, for example.
Yes, I get it. Right, that's right. Gosha, you understand what's being said there? That is
no, but that means that you as a defining that would put as the next value after your given value put missing. Because from my point of view, as like I just get an object, I don't know that the values after that should be missing. So
no, sure.
So you can, when you put missing at the end of your data, then everything after that will be extrapolated as missing, because it holds the value from the left. So.
Okay, so one way to achieve that will be to put in the end date the missing value.
But then also the thing would be to have
from left.
Yes.
And what's returned when using hold from left for the left side of the
Well,
time
that's
series?
what I'm thinking. You just need to probably again introduce the starting value, which is the missing, right before your first value.
Okay, because I wonder if it will be easier to have another option in time series to allow to have some kind of valid interval, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So that,
I mean,
that would avoid having this hack of adding the ending data's missing value.
Yes. So you would want to have like the domain in a way.
yes, that makes some sense. I mean, it'll probably even make sense for an interpolating function, actually.
Right.
And for other domains in general. Yeah.
Okay. So that might
So
be
something like it might be interpolation domain or some such other thing. Or I don't know what the right name for it is, but I would suggest that that's relevant for everything that interpolates, everything with an interpolation order. Okay, let's continue. So that's one thing we're dealing with here. Okay, so then the proposal is that dated all, but now what happens? Okay, so how do we get a time series, a dated interval, a time series for an interval of dates? So we've got dated all, but so let's imagine that we want this one where I want to say you know, dated, and then I want an interval here. Can I do that? Does that work?
I'm not sure we are supporting interval of dates yet.
Okay. So probably we should, but Nick, is there a different way you want to do this? Yeah, okay, so that should probably work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a larger discussion about date intervals in a language and how we want to design them. And, you know, the two main sticking points which aren't as applicable here are opened and closed endpoints, which we don't have a universal design for an interval to begin with.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know we're going to have to deal with that for dates. I understand that. Although
right.
these dates are fuzzy enough, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And then, you know, there was a question about whether it should be a date interval or a date span, because we may have some interest in the sampling frequency of it, which, you know, how that relates to granularity is a little different of, you know, I want, you know, resolution on a year basis, but maybe, or I want it on a daily basis, but my sampling frequency may be different.
All right, but okay, so one piece of this then is how does dated take intervals, and then what granularity of sampling is there in the interval?
Right.
Now, I mean, arguably, dated could just take, I mean, as a syntactic hack, dated could perfectly well just take the naked the naked list here, because dated itself normally, you know, it's only taking an integer as a courtesy, right? Normally it would take data objects.
Yeah, and as a reference, that interval will work if you change those to date objects. I think the server right now doesn't know how to handle, so the line above that in 36, if you change that to date object of 1935,
then this will actually work.
Yeah, I believe it works with some domains. I'm not sure about historical country.
Okay. Okay, for some reason that didn't work.
No, it's not working with historical country. I already tested with it.
I see. So that's the syntax that's used in some other places for specifying a date interval inside dated.
Okay, all right, but that's something we need to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay, and I suggest that for our historical country stuff that we support things like this. I think dated in general is, you know, for the stuff for the types of data that we have so far, dated is year granularity type stuff, and I think we can perfectly well support those things.
But here you will need to add a double list, isn't it?
Why?
Because if not, that could be confused with 1935 with month 1941.
No, but I don't think that's right, because doesn't dated require a date object in general?
Yeah, right now, dated does not support a dateless specification.
Right, I don't think it should. I don't think it should. I think it should either be a date object or a year, because so much of the time you're just going to be doing it by year. We have some comments on the live stream here. Oh, the potato famine. I forgot the Irish potato famine. That's why the population went down in the late 1840s. Karl is complaining about the lack of a date round, date interval function. What is this? Date round. That seems like a Nick issue.
Yeah, we have day round, which isn't general to dates, and we have next date and previous date, but we don't have currently a date round function, which I think is just a hole that we can fill.
I think we should have it. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the functionality to do it.
Right, because day round is specific to business day stuff, and it was introduced for financial data kinds of things.
Yeah, right. And there's day rounding convention arguments for day round, which don't
I understand,
really
but this is going to deal with the century. So this is, but in general, if I want to take the year, the year 1830 or something, and I want to make that the 19th century, don't I just say date object? What do I do here? Do I say date object?
Just say century, yeah, and it will go to the closing. Yeah, it will go to the enclosing granularity.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
by the way, did you fix that stuff that came up for the interpreter for 18th century and so on? Did somebody fix that? We just didn't have. If you type in interpreter,
right,
date 18th century, it's not working.
Okay,
right? But it could perfectly well work and go to a century granularity date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that might be a case where it's trying the wrong parsing path, but I'll check on that.
Okay, Karl is asking about Lesotho as a whole polygon with holes. It's being fixed. That's what polygons with holes. The new polygons with holes will deal with that. Ethan is asking about. He's asking for a lot. He's asking for entity value for glaciers to have time series. Sorry, don't have that. Is that what is that actually? What is the status of that? I mean, is Alan? Do you happen to remember?
We don't have that data. There's a database that has a lot of sort of statistical data about glaciers, but we have never had polygons for the boundaries, the extent of them.
Ah, okay, fair enough.
We are currently working on a new GeoServer protocol that will know about dates, so we will be able to connect these databases or GeoServers like NASA, for example,
which has time series based polygonal data, is what you're saying,
right?
Tiles they have in particular for tile data. So to access this timed tile data.
Right. And what are we doing, by the way, with GeoImage? I assume GeoImage is going to get some GeoImage is going to be able to do dated type stuff, right? As soon as our current data source, if I'm not mistaken, is so if I say GeoImage Eiffel Tower, for example, right now that's just going to give me the current Eiffel Tower, right? But if we have historical imagery, then we should be able to get. That is very. Why did it pick that georange?
It's the default georange of about 10 miles, I think.
I see.
Yes. So
don't you think that for a I mean, if the georange, if I said something like for a point object like a building, that does seem a bit odd to have to go as far as 10 miles.
Yes, it's the default we have right now for geopositions for point-like objects.
Right, but that might make sense for GeoListPlot. It might make less sense for GeoImage.
Mm-hmm.
But if I said here, just to understand, if I said here georange is like 200 feet, that will just work, right?
Yep.
Should do at least. Okay.
I don't know what that updating.
Yeah, what the heck is going on?
I've never seen that.
Maybe the Eiffel Tower is being repainted a different color, and we've got real. Do you see that those the Planet Labs guys just launched another like 80 satellites last week?
Mm-hmm.
So there should be some.
This may be independent. It's downloading because it doesn't seem related to Geo.
Should I abort here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Strange.
Yeah, one question which is being raised by what Ethan is asking on the live stream is, what do we do with an object where we don't in fact have a time series, but where somebody says dated of whatever? What do we say? Do we give a message? We probably should. See what I'm saying? So in particular with the glacier example, if you say dated, I mean, you know, we obviously have geopositions of glaciers, but even those might be completely wrong. Well, whatever. I mean, if somebody asks for a dated thing and the dated thing doesn't exist, same deal as with the, you know, Nazi Germany 1948, right? Doesn't exist. We should be saying that. We should be generating a message that says it doesn't exist. Or Roman Empire in 55 BC type thing, or whatever it was. Am I making sense?
But in that case, we could answer with missing not applicable, and maybe with a second argument there, or with some of these wrappers that could tell you that which error was.
The answer to the question on the live stream about geoimagery is, yeah, we intend to work with all possible providers of such. Just all these things take time. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So I'm sorry. We're back to, so in the case of geoimage, what we expect to be doing is just saying geoimage of dated or whatever to get date specifications. Is that right?
Yes. So the idea is to have a general language inside the Geo server option and then shortcuts of that form. Dated.
Okay, let me ask this question. If I say dated of this, comma, 1930, clearly geoposition could ingest that date.
Yes, it could, certainly.
But should it? I don't think it should.
Exactly, I don't think so. Anything eating that object should understand it, but it shouldn't change your position.
What are you with elevation data, which is what are you doing there? Is that has another wrapper, right, for around geoposition that gives the elevation? Is that true?
Yes. So the idea was to have a function that would shift the geoposition. We don't have it yet.
Okay, fine, but that will then put the elevation into the geoposition.
Yes, because the geoposition by default has already an elevation and a date.
Yeah, I know it does. I know the default date is right now. Is the default date now, or is the default date any?
No, the default elevation is 0 with respect to the ellipsoid, and the default time is now.
Okay. Is it obvious that the default time should be now rather than any, basically?
Well, it needs to have a value, right?
Why? What's going to use that value? I see. If you feed it to like a satellite data thing, it's going to use the value of time. But it could, I mean, that's another case where we're going to have, so satellite data also generates a time series, right? So satellite data and travel direction type stuff, and the aircraft paths will generate time series.
Right. We also have the day hemisphere and this type of thing needing time.
Right. But so if I do this and then I say, what do I just say here? Location or position?
Position.
Okay, so that's the current position. So then this should work presumably with either dated of ISS or dated of position. Does that work?
I don't think this works.
Well, actually, it appears to work.
It does. Yeah, that's great.
Why it gives extra precision on the time, I have no idea.
I think this is now. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. That I don't know.
Let's see if we think it's plausible. I mean, if we do that, and then we say, why is it doing that? If we
now has extra precision. It's microseconds, and because this is in seconds from 1900, it's 1900. It's a huge number.
So if I say, so this should just work. Geoposition %4, %5. Cool. That's pretty cool. That's the distance. That's the actual distance traveled by the space station, right? Because assuming a straight line, assuming it wasn't, it's actually a curved arc, because it's got all three XYZ coordinates. Okay. Good question from Karl on the live stream. Are there hooks for data to work with custom entity stores? Anybody know?
There are. I mean, dated basically boils down to a reference to the date qualifier for any given property. So I don't have an easy example offhand, but I've seen Tony demonstrate using dated. So like the same interface that's used for the market data links, the Bloomberg and Reuters uses the same dated reference, or it uses dated to refer to those objects which are created via custom entity stores.
Okay, I see, I understand. So the Bloomberg link, if you say dated of some company, it'll do the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh boy, we got a lot of stuff to go over here. Okay. What is this? Interval arithmetic doesn't work with dates. We know this. This is being worked on by Nick, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Part of the temporal logic thing and so on.
Right. And it'll probably have a different head than interval, but interval of a date will give you a date interval in whatever form we have that.
Right. Okay. The next big issue. Okay, so I think we're okay with all of these things. The next big issue is historical. Well, look, there's two problems. One is this whole entity continuity for countries. And the other is this thing we're about to look at, which is, what is this? The Geo Lookup question. What the heck is this here? What is this?
So in this case, we're looking at checking the polygons for the historical countries that we have on the year 3000 BC. So we're looking that we can work. You can use dated as well on the well.
Oh, I see. On
the type or on the property.
Wow. I see. So what you're saying is, and why are you saying delete missing here? Because most of what happens is that there are countries, but they were. So for example, if I say the most naive thing would be if I say, well, I don't even know how to do this. If I say entity value dated minus 3000, how would I do that? How would I get the entity list? You get what I'm asking?
Oh, we can just do entity value, historical country, dated polygon, and then it's going to list all the historical countries and apply the polygons.
I know, but I want it without the polygons. I just want the names of the countries. So if I say entity or something here.
I think you probably want entity class of historical country, and then to treat it as a.
That looks like a big mess there. Let's ask the question. So I'm just trying to look syntactically. If I want an entity list of countries,
You want ones that existed in a particular time?
Yes. So
I don't think we have any syntax to do that.
Okay.
That will work for that right now. That's one of the things we need to figure out.
Fair enough. So, I mean, one way to do that would be to say entity list. I mean, the question is whether we're going to wind up with a special wrapper for historical countries. I mean, so we could do entity list of dated historical country. It's a slight abuse of notation, comma, minus 2000 or something, which would then give us a list of historical countries, then possibly.
So we have internally some classes, helper classes to do this lookup also, but we never found the actual syntax to expose that. For example, that's an example of a possible syntax for these classes.
Fair enough. Well, that would be a reasonable thing to do. Someone with an unpronounceable name on the live stream is pointing out the dynamic of geoposition of the ISS does the wrong thing. I'm not surprised. I think if you do a refresh, if you do an explicit refresh, you can do it, but we are not triggering. We don't have the desire or the technology to automatically trigger on a certain distance moved by a satellite. So you have to explicitly do a dynamic with a refresh.
Stephen, what if you do the dated name instead of entity? Because if the data is on the property, name is the property of the entity, and we had dated polygon. Okay.
Oh, but that's because what is this? I think if I do a delete missing here, I might actually see Mesopotamia or whatever.
No. That would have to be supported, I think.
Okay, so let's take a look here. I don't understand what these are. Historical, but okay, so that's that lookup. But double dated country extension in the year of historical countries existing in the year minus 200. Okay, but the thing that geo within Q, this is the one I'm interested in. It's like, what was here? Okay, hold on. Let's do geo, what is it? Geo, what am I looking for? Geo, what's the thing that tells me geo identify? So what was here, X number of, hundreds of years ago is my question. So geo identify, and what I'm asking then is entity type historical country. And then what I might want to say is location. So let's say Eiffel Tower. Why not? Okay, so what's that going to do? Okay, so what we could do for this is to give a time series. Am I making sense?
I don't think so, because so the idea here is to return a list of entities, but maybe if we want a time series, we should have a way to specify that we want that explicitly. I mean, like, for example, having a dated historical country, comma, all.
Okay, but then geo-identify of historical country, what would you like to return? You just a list of what historical countries have ever been at this location?
At any point of their history. Yes,
yeah.
I think that will make more sense in the first approximation.
So then you're saying comma time series would give us the time series. I don't have a problem with that.
But what else could we put in this third argument?
Well, it's either a list or a time series, which is similar to what we get in word frequency data and so on.
And we have, if we want a particular date?
No, I wonder if we should use the dated wrapper in this case instead of having a third argument. I mean, around the historical country.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Reasonable enough. And then dated all would do the same thing it's doing in other places and give a time series.
Right. Yeah. And in this case, we can also specify the date or the interval dates, let's say. Or
yeah, okay. That's the right way to do it. I agree.
That's more flexible.
By the way, I'd like to point out that returning true if at least one polygon, blah, 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 is within whatever, just as we're supporting temporal logic, we're about to do, the temporal logic stuff, we're going to need spatial logic stuff as well. And I don't think we have that. I mean, do we have, from the region stuff, do we have that kind of spatial logic? Is this, because it's kind of complicated. I mean, is this region fully contained within this one? Does this region overlap this one?
I think Roger was working on that type of thing. There is something called Allen algebra, which handles like 9 different types of relations: touching, containing, overlapping, this type of thing.
Okay, sounds relevant.
Yeah, and I think Roger was working on on their spatial version of that.
For regions and so on.
For regions,
which
exactly.
would then work for this as well.
Well, not directly. We are also trying to establish a bridge between the geo and the regions functionality now that we have the polygons with holes, which was the main connection piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, eventually it should work.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to have to disappear in a moment here. How would one use this to show Confederate versus Union states during the Civil War? Well, we've got 2 historical countries, presumably. Is that right? Let's see. If we say U.S. Confederacy, if I can spell it. No, what the heck is that? Oh, that's really weird. Oh, because you didn't take that. You didn't take that linguistic for the U.S. Confederacy, since the U.S. didn't really exist at that time, or something. Or did? I don't know. I don't know. That linguistic should probably work. Okay, so then this should give. So what we should be able to give here. Gosh. So here, if I say dated, okay, now I'm going to totally embarrass myself and not even know a date within the time of the Civil War. Okay, what about, is that right? This is super embarrassing, but
63, 64.
Low 60s.
63, 64.
Okay, good. Glad you guys know some history. Okay, so that should give. What happened?
Right polygon. So that's the entity which determines the georange, but just right polygon around the dated. No, polygon of dated with geographics. Geographics is
but
more.
This should also work.
Yes,
should work, but
in the same way that we have to say polygon of France.
Beautiful. Interesting. Really? Well, whatever. History lessons. I don't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Seth is commenting that in our data we shrink the boundaries of the U.S. during the Civil War. What a mess. Okay, so that is yet another example of one of these continuity of countries questions. I mean, do we have a sensible answer to this? I mean, in other words, like me not knowing Roman Republic versus Roman Empire, or you get what I'm saying? I mean, in other words, is there a notion? I mean, there's also a notion.
I think this is why we wanted a double dated, because we wanted something like what did exist in 1900, which was a continuation of what existed in 1500.
What do you mean by that? So you mean the projection of the country, so to speak, the time projection of that country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what counts as a single country? I mean, if
but that's somehow the successor or the
predecessor.
Predecessor of the.
I see.
But that's a different property, I think. Well, we could have maybe it's classes also for this kind of continuity, because in not all the cases you have that really.
Okay, but wait a second. So you're saying at a given spatial point, there is, well, at a given spatial point, there is a time series of what country was there. But this question about what is the successor country of a given country, does that mean something or not? I mean, what on earth is the... I mean, look, in practice, you know, there's obviously countries can split in two, but there's lots of apparatus of a country, you know. I mean, there's probably some reasonable historical definition of successor country, which could be more than one country as a successor. And we probably can have that graph. Well, see, this is really complicated, isn't it? At the moment when a country splits in two or something, the claim would be it's like, you know, there's enough cytoplasm, so to speak, of the country that you can reasonably talk of a successor country, he says. Not really knowing that that's right.
No, with China, the original China is the Republic of China, right? The successor of the pre-revolutionary China is Taiwan, right?
Yeah, okay.
So
because basically everybody decamped to Taiwan, or the people who were the apparatus of government there somehow went to Taiwan, is what you're claiming.
Yeah,
So you think my definition is silly, basically.
Yes. So it's not a matter of just surface, of just area.
No, but so do we believe that there is a meaningful historical piece of data, which is what was the continuity of the apparatus of government, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
But that, I agree that the Taiwan case is a complicated one. And
also there are countries that changed their name, their formal name. So other different countries like Venezuela, it's República Bolivariana de Venezuela, and that is a different country. And
no, in this case we are still keeping the same country because it's also the same ISO code, etc. So right now they are not like changing totally.
Well, wait a minute. In modern times, obviously there are ISO codes for countries, but there weren't ISO codes in the case of the Roman Republic. So in modern times, is our definition it's a new country if it gets a new ISO code. Is that right?
Right. We've been trying to follow that, and that's why we have Antarctica.
So South Sudan got a new ISO code.
Right. I think the only case in country data that doesn't have an ISO code, it's Gaza Strip, which West Bank and Kosovo, which are also politically with a lot of issues.
So does Kashmir have an ISO code, or is it?
No, that's part of another country thing.
Okay, but so then, okay. Okay, so at the current time, ISO codes are sort of the definition we can use. I need to get going actually here. Okay, so I still have not understood your double dated business. We're going to have to continue this another time. This is coming together. I'm happy to say. All right, to be continued. Sorry, I have to go. Thanks everyone. Thanks people on live stream also. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.